In today's presentation, we will be discussing why we believe the area and culture of St Paul's, including the prominent student hotspots of Stokes, Croft and Gloucester Road, require decolonisation. Through researching the history of the culturally rich area following Windrush in the last 30 years, where there has been a visible gentrification of the area, we aim to recognise how St Paul's can now be considered as a colonised area, as well as what we can do to alter this process. In order to evaluate how Stokes, Croft and the St Paul's region of Bristol can be considered as a gentrified space today, it is necessary to consider how St Paul's first formed into such a prominent space of working-class black culture. As a response to the labour shortages in the country following World War II, the 1950s and 60s saw a mass movement of immigration from people of the Caribbean into Britain. Albeit the hopeful black immigrants were promised a better life in the UK, as considered by Clement and Lanani, this promise was broken the minute they entered Britain, as they were pushed to the sidelines of the prosperous city life once promised, and were instead clustered in the damaged and desolate areas of St Paul's and Easton, considered by the Bristol Museum's website as resembling something of a slum. As considered here by Peploe, despite the hardships faced by black Bristolians in the outskirts of the city, the formation of a solid community of African and West Indians emerged in efforts to overcome their treatment by British society as outsiders. This is summarised well in his ideas concerning the attraction of St Paul's and Easton as a region that united black Bristolians who felt excluded, were systematically discriminated against within British society and felt they had nowhere else to go. This is recognised as a community-initiated response to racism, labelled the colony by Hall et al., as strong social ties and community values emerge which result in the flourishing of an alternative black social life. As pictured here, a positive response to such racism emerges in the opening of nightclubs, formation of sports teams, and social movements aimed at combating such discriminations. In the next 3 slides, I will be exploring 3 separate examples of the formation of strong community ties as a response to discrimination in Bristol. Firstly, we have the Bristol bus boycott of April 1963, an effective protest in response to the omnibus's discriminatory procedures in refusing to hire black bus drivers. As considered by Mansour, this was a successful protest and helped to further unite Bristol's African-Caribbean community, as they already had strong social ties within religious, social and cultural hubs, predominantly in the St Paul's area. My next example is the 1980 St Paul's riot. This is a response to the large-scale police raid on the Black and White Cafe in Grosvenor Road, considered by Clement as being the front line of Bristol's black community social hub and already having negative connotations as being a reputational ghetto. The police practice of the St Paul's riots was consequently believed to be a purposeful attempt for the white police force to suppress a unique black culture. Such an attack from the British state, therefore, can be considered as further pushing segregation onto the Afro-Caribbean hub and promoting an ideal of separation when it suited them in 1980. My final example of culture forming in the St Paul's region of Bristol and representing the prominent Afro-Caribbean culture of the area is the St Paul's Carnival. The origins of Carnival emerge as an exemplar of collective pride in the face of external defamation, with many traditional dances and spoken word performances being created as a response to the oppression and slavery of black people. Therefore, the emergence of such an exciting and prominent festival in the heart of the black community of St Paul's was to celebrate culture, exhibit political assertion and promote self-determination of the distinct Afro-Caribbean community. However, the carnival, once primarily associated to essential identities of blackness, today is commonly associated to a festival and the cool street parties mostly attended by white students. St Paul's Carnival, then, is a prime example for the focus of this presentation, in exploring if it is appropriate for such prominent representatives of black history and culture to be subject to such gentrification, and how we can resolve this issue.
Gentrification is an economic and social process. Low-income areas and communities formed out of oppression and are emphasised for their desirability, and can be stolen by wealthier and more powerful individuals outside of the community, a process of trendification. Colonial mentality may be to blame for the participation of white societies and companies in gentrification, as seen in a quote by Mills. During Europeanisation, some elements of black culture are gentrified as they are what is seen as cool by the masses. In the context of Stokes Croft, this is the students and young professional workers. There are 3 main factors that have contributed to the need for Stokes Croft and St Paul's to be decolonised, the first of which is the 90s rave scene and its black influences. As stated by Hall, drum and bass emerged in traditionally working-class areas of East London in the early 1990s. The genre has a connection to abandoned spaces in cities such as Bristol. Fred Perry article describes Bristol in the 1990s as bubbling with homegrown DJs, rappers, vocalists, producers, and graffiti writers. It also suggests that Bristol is known for its clubs and diverse subcultures permeating coolness. The second factor is the prestige and whiteness of the University of Bristol. Though data shows that UK drum and bass cultural identities are constructed around ideas of blackness, clubbers are predominantly white British young men. Though within the raving or clubbing environment the act of borrowing cultural expressions is inevitable, it becomes problematic when individuals steal from black communities to suit white middle-class trends. This borrowing is more acceptable within groups that reflect the socio-economic background that drum and bass is derived from. However, the vast majority of University of Bristol students do not come from this background. The third factor is how profitable this edgy aesthetic can be. In 2018, Montpellier was awarded the title of hippiest place in the UK, with Stokes Croft specifically coming in at 5th place. The Stokes Croft area is so profitable and trendy due to the creative and cultural labour of its inhabitants. Street art in Stokes Croft and St Paul's is often used to highlight injustices and events for marginalised groups, but these expressions are seen as cool by University of Bristol students. The need for decolonisation can be seen throughout modern-day Stokes Croft, with the Stokes Croft Day Party, Dickie's Barbershop, Milk Teeth Cafe, Cuts and Crepes Barbershop, designer vintage pop-up shops, and Carriageworks providing just a few examples.
Conclusion. Why is gentrification so dangerous, and how to begin the process of decolonisation? First and foremost, to stop gentrification at its base level, views on social class must change. Without such, no genuine progress can be made. In the book by J.N. DeSena, Gentrification and Inequality in Brooklyn, The New Kids on the Block, written in 2009, he suggests that neighbourhood interactions demonstrate that the human and social and economic capital of gentrifiers differentiates them as superior to their working class neighbours. While he is referring to the issues in Brooklyn, many of the issues here have a similar theme and are parallel with what's going on in Stokes Croft. DeSena continues his theme in that he suggests that gentrifiers are condescending towards ordinary people and have almost no regard for culture that has been set before them. And this seems to be the main issue with gentrification in these areas. Why gentrification is so dangerous. To explain this, we need to use Chris Hamnett's explanation of gentrification. He suggests that it is clear from these definitions that gentrification involves both a change in the social composition of an area and its residents, and a change in the nature of the housing stock, tenure, price, condition, etc., and an adequate explanation of gentrification will have to cover both aspects of the process, the housing and the residents. What we can see from this explanation of gentrification as a process is that it affects both people as well as buildings which are steeped in tradition, making it vital that this danger is seen to. The effect corporate companies have ruins the culture of an area by both forcing those with lower incomes out as well as replacing historical buildings steeped in tradition with corporate invested development. They do this by, as Chris Hamnett explains, changing the nature of housing stock, tenure, for example, tenure, price, condition, etc. Therefore making it unaffordable for those who lived there prior to gentrification to continue living there. Stokes Croft is the epitome of this process and only re-emphasised the danger of it, as well as reaffirming the need for decolonisation. Stopping gentrification on a wider scale. The most critical issue with gentrification is the loss of culture and identity to a certain area. As explained previously, the loss of buildings steeped in history adds to this process. What we need to do to stop gentrification on a wider scale is education. This includes education in schools in Bristol, most specifically within Stokes Croft and St Paul's, as well as showcasing the history of Stokes Croft to younger people. This also includes encouraging investment into Stokes Croft Land Trust, which seems to be the only place which is fighting against gentrification. Finally, it is important to educate those coming into Bristol, for example, University of Bristol students coming into the city, and also encouraging them to not play a part in the process of gentrification. Finally, we can take a look at what has been done so far. The only organisation which has made an effort to stop gentrification is the Stokes Croft Land Trust. These are some of the promises they have made, and these include benefiting society, helping those who are being forced out, having property in common, as well as giving Stokes Croft its independence back. Thank you.